where better to start than for producer Zach's team, the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa comes in to OTAs this year 10 to 15 pounds lighter than he was. He was playing at 220 all of last season. He wants to be more agile. He wants to increase his escapability. Remember last year he put on weight and he was taking jiu-jitsu lessons, trying to lessen the chance of injuries after he had that injury-plagued 2022 season. And, right now they want to try and go the other way. They're trying to get him to be a little bit more mobile. Remember at Alabama how good Tua was at getting out of the pocket and making plays? It's never really a runner, but he's a little bit more agile than we've seen in the past. And something I dove into, guys, is that Zach always talks about how Tua takes sacks in big games, how he's always under constant pressure and folding in big moments. So I took a look at a couple of the big Dolphins games from last season. Remember the Bills game? Zach was here at my house watching.
Mm-hmm.
4 sacks against the Bills in game 1 last year. 3 against the Chiefs in that international game where they lost. And then 4 sacks against the Eagles in that primetime game where Tua started to crumble late. So for the 29 sacks Tua took over the course of last season, 11 of them came in just 3 games and 3 high pressure, big time games that, could have ultimately determined the Dolphins season, as they were just a win away from having a home playoff game last year. Instead, you go on the road to Arrowhead playing in the freezing cold, and we all know what a disaster that was. So it's important that Tua does improve in that regard. But at the same time, it's a little concerning to me because you have to keep him healthy, especially when they close the season at Green Bay versus the Jets, at Houston versus San Fran, at Cleveland, at the Jets. It's a tough end of the season for the Dolphins. And if Tua's not healthy, it's a big problem. Ziggy, do you see him losing the weight as a concern, or are you saying, all right, this should help him? I'm not too worried about the injuries.
This is actually a trend across the league. And while you think weight might help avoid injuries, oftentimes it's the opposite. Lamar Jackson came to training camp this year 25 pounds lighter than he was in 2022. So for a lot of these guys, the thing is while you talk about losing weight, you have a little bit less cushioning or whatever, you're also that much more agile. You're that much more fit. And if you're getting sacked by like a 280-pound defensive end, you're going to get hurt. Maybe it will be bad. Maybe it won't. But there's just no way to avoid injury if you're getting hurt. The hope is that you get this kind of agility and that lightness, and it helps you avoid getting hit in the first place. So I actually think with respect to Tua, if this means he takes a couple fewer sacks next season, that's going to have a much bigger impact than the extra 5 or 10 pounds is going to. Because what he's losing, these training regimens are so optimized in the NFL at this point.
They're crazy.
What he's losing isn't muscle. He's not getting weaker. They're getting every last bit of fat off that body. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for him. I actually am really optimistic that a slightly more agile Tua that's lost, like a couple percentage points of his body weight combined with the jiu-jitsu. He clearly made some improvements in the injury department last season. I think this will help him keep it going.
Okay.
Tua, overall, I'm a believer. I like him. I'm a fan. He was a bit of a chubster last year. So I do think that the 10 to 15, I think the 10 to 15 pounds off is definitely helpful. But again, it is hard to trust this dude because I've always defended the Dolphins. I said most of these hard games they've played on the road, unlike most other teams. Let's see how he plays primetime at home, a chance for the number 2 seed, and your rival comes in there and beats you. Then you go on the road in a playoff game, you lose by 30 points.
I mean, he threw 4 picks in that Bills game too.
They throwing 4 picks at home, against the Bills. Right, I forgot. You're right, he did. So while I think he's a good quarterback, this is a good team who will probably make the playoffs again. It's tough to come into this season saying, okay, regardless of losing a few pounds or not, with this tough schedule, especially the end of the year, like you just read off, not easy to trust. Not at all. I'd like to, though. I think he's good.
No, I completely agree with you. And this leads in nicely to the second part of the Tua conversation when we look at the contract situation. Because right now, he's in amidst contract negotiations. So is Jordan Love, so is Dak Prescott. All these guys are reworking their deals. And when you see Jared Goff get $53 million a year on a 4-year, $212 million deal, it's easy to sit back now if you're a Dolphins fan and say, wow, Tua's going to ask for that kind of money. The stats are very similar. Goff threw basically 4,600 yards last season, second in the NFL. Tua, 4,624. He led the league. Goff, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Tua, 29 and 14. Like these guys put up very similar numbers, 12 wins for Detroit, 11 for Miami. when you're at the negotiating table and Miami's made an offer that Tua is already rejected, and Ziggy, we were talking about this just before the show started. I was texting you. I hate the situation when you have a good, not great quarterback, but you have to, like, if you're the Dolphins, you have to give him the money because you have a team that's ready to compete right now. You have an aging roster with guys like Tyreek Hill who are ready to win now. You have to give him the money, right?
It's the question you have to ask isn't in a vacuum because is Tua better than like Patrick Mahomes? No. But he's probably going to get more money than Patrick Mahomes. So when you step back and it's like that can seem alarming. But the question you have to ask yourself as a Dolphins fan is a better player coming through that door? And it's the same question the Cowboys are asking themselves of Dak Prescott. Yeah. It's the same question the Jaguars are asking of Trevor Lawrence. It's the same question a little bit the Packers are asking of Jordan Love when you're deciding how far are we willing to go on the contract. And replacing even an above average quarterback in the NFL is just tough. You see it every year, right? You need to have, in order to get it in the draft, you need to have like a top 10 draft pick to have a decent chance of it. And even then, it's still terrible. It's very rare a guy like Kirk Cousins is available in free agency. Usually free agent quarterbacks are guys like Derek Carr, who their teams are letting him go for a reason. It's just so tough to replace a good quarterback. So even if the market skyrockets, you know, I think back in like 2016, Andrew Luck got $25 million.
Yep.
Now Jared Goff is getting twice that. It's very difficult in a certain way to look back and say these are good numbers. But at a certain point, I think even if you're not happy with what Tua's done, it's tough to justify closing the window.
And Jared Goff is good. I don't want to make it sound like we all think Jared Goff is very good.
Jared Goff is a top 10 quarterback, but he's in 10-5 rather than 5-1.
Borderline, yeah. I think he hovers around that top 10 spot. I'd say closer 10 to 12, 13, but you know, to each his own.
The thing that makes me worried about Tua, honestly, because part of what you're paying for is the leader, right?
Yep.
We'll talk about this when we talk about Green Bay a little bit later, but in many OTAs, you're seeing basically everyone show up. And what are they saying? You know, Nick Bosa showed up to the 49ers OTAs for the first time this year. Basically the first time in his career.
Tua is there now.
For the Dolphins?
I believe Tua is there now.
Yeah, Tua's there, but the question is who's not there? Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell, Terron Armstead, Jalen Ramsey, Kendall Fuller, Shaq Barrett, Zach Sealer, right? So almost every single starter, you know, I'm not excluding the ones who are absent for injuries, right? Like Chubb, Phillips, Chop Robinson,
yep.
But like almost every starter on the team isn't there. So I worry a little bit about Tua's ability to lead this team when you see other quarterbacks, even Brock Purdy is stepping in and saying, look, you know, I contacted Nick Bosa and tried to make sure he'd show up because we're here to win. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, for some of the first practices of the year, aren't able to get any of their starters to show up. That's worrying if you're looking at Tua as the guy who's going to lead this team.
I mean, he can't force people to show up, you know.
No, but like,
who knows?
Somehow Jordan Love can do it.
Well, maybe Tua tried. You don't know. You just
if he tried and failed, that's even worse. No one's going to listen to Tua to show up to practice.
I mean, it's so luxurious. So we've said this time and time again. You don't know what it's like to have an above average QB until he's gone.
Oh, 100%.
And I mean, me as a Steelers fan, I can speak from, you know, serious experience. We've stung for the last
recent experience.
Yeah, recent experience. He's like, and you said too, like an older, aging team who has what it takes. I mean, unlikely, but has what it takes to be the last team standing. He's got to be the guy. What are you going to take a gamble or a risk with someone else?
If Miami had stayed healthy last season and had been able to secure the number 2 seed or even get the 1 seed, there is a legit Super Bowl shot.
Yeah, like if they won a game at home,
100%.
They had the number 2 seed.
Yeah, 100%. If they were competing in Miami for a chance to go to the Super Bowl on that playoff run, I think they were very legitimate threats. The whole problem was
tough for me to look at it. It's tough for me to. I'm sorry. It's tough for me to look at a team that lost 7-26 in the playoffs and say that was the Super Bowl threat.
No. I'm saying if they'd stayed healthy, you got to remember that team was decimated at the end. Waddle was banged up. So Waddle was hurt. Bradley Chubb was out. Jalen Phillips got hurt. Who else was out in the corner? One of the corners was Howard hurt. I think Howard got hurt. Like
they were starting players we'd never even heard.
No, they were playing people we didn't know. I give them a pass on last season. Now they lost a lot of guys in free agency too. That's another issue for Miami. But when you talk about last year's Dolphins, that team was rolling. And then just, unfortunately, it's like almost like the Knicks with they actually were kind of like the Knicks this year. They just got crushed.
If the Dolphins had won that game at home, but they host the Steelers round one, then they host another game. So it's a totally different story.
The Dolphins easily could have, this Dolphins team could easily be coming off an AFC Championship game appearance, but because of the way the season unfolded, and you go into Kansas City and it's -1 degree,
and no one's gonna win there.
No one's gonna win there, especially that Dolphins team in -1 degree weather. Yeah, they got steamrolled. It happened, and now the perception's a little different around Miami, but this team was really good for a large portion of the season. And I do think, despite the 1-5 record against playoff teams last year, like, you can't ignore the fact that Tua has struggled in big games. They got blown out in big games. He chokes under pressure sometimes. He still has the Dolphins in the best position they've been in 20 years. Go and look on Pro Football Reference. Look at the Dolphins' record by season. Someone commented this the other day. Miami has quietly been one of the worst franchises in the NFL over the past 2 decades. I mean, they haven't won a playoff game since 2000 or 2001.
They've been abysmal.
Yeah. And they followed up that 2000 win in overtime against the Colts by losing 27-0.
Yeah, so we can't ignore that this Dolphins team has been dreadful. I mean, there's a 1-15 season in there. So for any Dolphins fans who want to throw Tua off the boat right now, go and take a look at what you've been versus what you are right now. And if you get rid of Tua, who knows the next time? Who knows when you're going to be back in a situation like this?
Can I just say something funny about this Dolphins team?
Yeah, please.
So you said they haven't won any playoff games, and that's true since 2000. They won in 98, 99, and 2000. As I said, in 2000, they followed up that win losing 27-0. In 1999, they followed up their win by losing 62-7. In 1998, they followed up their win by losing 38-3. So if the Dolphins win a playoff game this year, it could get ugly fast.
Alt spread. The other team with the alternate spread.
We go alt spread. We immediately are.
I mean, they lost 62-7 to the Jaguars.
Wait, Ziggy, this calls for a Ziggy Dolphin noise. Can you make it?
I'm trying, man. It's tough.
So this is.
Paul, can you make one?
No, I can't. No, I'm not trying it.
See, Paul, at least I tried.
Not even attempting it.
I mean, I did. And you just heard that. That was a horrible sound.